During a reconciliation dinner with my estranged son, the maid poured my wine and pressed a napkin into my hand. I looked down and froze. It read, "Don't drink. Fake a stomach ache and leave now. They are waiting." I trembled, but stood up and ran to my car. I parked down the street to watch. 10 minutes later, I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Joanne, and at 66 years old, I thought I had seen every kind of betrayal life could offer. I was wrong. The betrayal that would cut deepest was still waiting for me, disguised as a dinner invitation from my own son. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in late October. I was sitting in my small kitchen, nursing my second cup of coffee and trying to make my monthly budget stretch to cover the heating bill, when Curtis's name appeared on my phone screen. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, not since our last argument about his wife Rebecca. "Mom?" His voice sounded different, softer, almost like the boy I used to know before he married into money and forgot where he came from. "Curtis." I set down my coffee cup, my heart already racing. My son didn't call unless he needed something, and it had been that way for 2 years now. "I was thinking, maybe we could have dinner this weekend. Rebecca and I would like to have you over." The words came out rehearsed, like he had practiced them. "Saturday night, 7 o'clock? Nothing fancy, just family time." I stared out my kitchen window at the oak tree where Curtis used to climb as a boy. The leaves were turning golden, just like they were the day his father died 5 years ago. "Why now, Curtis? Does there have to be a reason? You're my mother. Rebecca thinks we should try to mend things between us." Rebecca thinks. Everything in Curtis's life now came down to what Rebecca thought. The woman who had swept into our lives 2 years ago with her designer clothes and perfect smile, slowly erasing every trace of the family Curtis used to cherish. "I'll think about it," I said, though I already knew I would go. Despite everything, despite the cold shoulders and the canceled holiday dinners, Curtis was still my baby boy. The one I had raised alone after his father left when Curtis was 8. The one I had worked 3 jobs to put through college. "Great. I'll text you the address." The address? As if I didn't know where my own son lived. But then again, maybe I didn't. The Curtis I knew used to live in a modest apartment downtown. This Curtis lived in a sprawling house in Millfield Estates, the kind of neighborhood where the driveways were longer than my entire street. Saturday came faster than I wanted. I spent an hour trying to decide what to wear, finally settling on my navy blue dress, the one I had bought for Curtis's wedding. It was the nicest thing I owned that still fit properly. I couldn't afford new clothes, not since my fixed income had to stretch to cover everything my deceased husband's insurance money couldn't. The drive to Millfield Estates felt like crossing into another world. Manicured lawns stretched like green carpets, and every house looked like it belonged in a magazine. I found Curtis's address and sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering courage I didn't know I needed to visit my own child. The house was even more imposing up close. 2 stories of pale stone and dark wood, with windows that gleamed like mirrors. I rang the doorbell, listening to the elaborate chimes echo inside. Rebecca answered, stunning as always in a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was perfect, practiced, and completely hollow. "Joanne, so glad you could make it." She air-kissed my cheek, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume. "Curtis is in the kitchen finishing up dinner. You look nice." The pause before nice said everything. I followed her through rooms that looked like a furniture showroom, all beiges and whites, not a single personal photo or lived-in touch. Everything was beautiful and cold. Curtis appeared from what I assumed was the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He looked good, too thin maybe, and there was something tired around his eyes that hadn't been there before his marriage. "Mom." He hugged me, but it was brief, distant, like hugging a polite stranger. "Thank you for inviting me. I said, meaning it despite everything. Let me take your coat, Rebecca said, already reaching for it. Curtis, why don't you get your mother something to drink? What would you like, Joanne? Wine? We have a lovely Pinot Grigio. Water is fine, thank you. I had learned to be careful about alcohol around Rebecca. She had a way of twisting words, and I wanted to keep my wits about me. Rebecca led me to their dining room, where the table was set for 3 with china that looked like it cost more than my car. The centerpiece was an elaborate arrangement of white flowers that seemed to have no scent. Beautiful but lifeless, like everything else in this house. Dinner will be ready in just a few minutes, Curtis called from the kitchen. Why don't you two get comfortable? Rebecca settled across from me with a glass of wine, her green eyes studying me like I was a specimen under a microscope. How have you been, Joanne? Curtis worries about you, you know. Living alone at your age, managing everything by yourself. The words were kind enough, but there was something underneath them that made my skin crawl. A suggestion, a hint. I manage just fine, I said carefully. Of course you do. But Curtis and I have been talking. He feels terrible about how distant things have gotten between you two. Family should stick together, don't you think? Before I could answer, a woman I had never seen before entered the dining room. She was middle-aged, Hispanic, wearing a simple black dress and carrying a wine bottle. Maria, Rebecca said without looking at her. Perfect timing. Please pour some wine for Mrs. Henderson. Actually, I asked for water, I said, looking at Maria. Maria's dark eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw something there that made me sit up straighter. Fear. Warning. Something was wrong. Of course, Maria said softly. I'll get you water right away. She moved to pour wine for Rebecca, coming around behind my chair. As she leaned over to fill Rebecca's glass, I felt something being pressed into my hand. A napkin. I looked down as casually as I could. Written in hurried handwriting across the cloth napkin were 4 words that made my blood turn to ice. Don't drink. Leave now. My heart began to pound. I glanced up at Maria, but she had moved away, her face carefully neutral. Rebecca was sipping her wine, talking about something I couldn't hear over the rushing in my ears. Actually, I heard myself say, standing up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. I'm not feeling very well. I think I should go home. Rebecca frowned. Oh no, what's wrong? I pressed my hand to my stomach, the napkin hidden in my palm. Just a bit of a stomachache, probably something I ate earlier. I should really get going. But Mom, Curtis appeared in the doorway, looking genuinely concerned. Dinner's almost ready. Are you sure you can't stay? The concern in his voice almost broke me. This was my son, the boy I had raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. But Maria's warning burned in my hand like a live coal. I'm sorry, I managed. Rain check? I moved toward the front door before either of them could protest further, Rebecca trailing behind me with protests about how sorry she was that I wasn't feeling well. Let me get your coat, she said, but I was already reaching for it myself. I can manage. Thank you for dinner. Curtis, I'll call you tomorrow. I practically ran to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. As I pulled out of the driveway, I could see Curtis and Rebecca standing in their doorway, watching me leave. I drove 3 blocks before pulling over in a grocery store parking lot. My whole body was trembling. I smoothed out Maria's napkin and read the words again. Don't drink. Leave now. What had been in that wine? What had they planned for me? I sat there in my car as the sun set, staring at those 4 words and realizing that the son I had loved and trusted with my whole heart had been planning something terrible for me. And I had no idea why. But I was going to find out. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maria's frightened face and felt that napkin being pressed into my palm. By 6 a.m, I was dressed and sitting in my car outside Curtis's neighborhood, waiting. I knew Rebecca left for her yoga class every Sunday at 8:30. Curtis had mentioned it once, back when he still shared details of his life with me. I watched their house from across the street, hidden behind a delivery truck, until I saw her silver BMW pull out of the driveway. 10 minutes later, I was at their front door. Maria answered, still in her pajamas and a thin robe. When she saw me, her face went white. "Mrs. Henderson, you should not be here," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Please," I said. "I need to know what you saved me from last night." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come in quickly. Mrs. Rebecca will be back in 1 hour." I followed her into the kitchen, where the remnants of last night's dinner still sat on expensive plates. Maria moved quickly, clearing the table while shooting anxious glances toward the windows. "Why did you warn me?" I asked. Maria stopped moving and looked at me with eyes full of pain. "Because I have seen this before, with Mrs. Rebecca's grandmother." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Sit, please." Maria gestured to a kitchen stool. "Mrs. Rebecca, she is not who you think she is." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. "Tell me." Maria's English was careful, accented but clear. "I worked for Mrs. Rebecca's family before she married your son. Her grandmother, Mrs. Patricia Whitmore. Very nice lady. Very rich. Mrs. Rebecca, she was always visiting, always so sweet." She paused, wringing her hands. "But then Mrs. Patricia started getting confused, forgetting things. Mrs. Rebecca said she needed help, needed someone to manage her money, her decisions. Mrs. Patricia signed papers. What kind of papers? Power of attorney. All of it. Mrs. Rebecca could do anything, sell house, move money, make decisions about Mrs. Patricia's care." I felt cold spreading through my chest. "What happened to her grandmother?" 6 months later, Mrs. Patricia was in a nursing home. A bad one. Mrs. Rebecca sold her house, took all her money. Mrs. Patricia died there, alone and confused, asking for family that never came. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too airless. "How much money?" $800,000, maybe more. The house was worth $300,000. Gone. All of it. I gripped the edge of the counter. "And you think Rebecca was planning to do this to me?" Maria nodded, tears beginning to form in her dark eyes. "The wine last night, it had pills in it to make you sleepy, confused. Then the papers." "What papers?" Maria disappeared for a moment and returned with a manila folder. Her hands shook as she opened it. "I found these in Mr. Curtis's study yesterday. I was dusting and they were on his desk." Inside were legal documents with my name printed across the top. Power of attorney, medical directive, something called a conservatorship application. My signature line was blank, but everything else was filled out in neat, professional handwriting. "They were going to drug me," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "Make me sign these while I was impaired." "Yes, and then..." Maria pulled out another document, a brochure for Sunset Manor Assisted Living. I knew the place. It was on the bad side of town, the kind of nursing home where people went to die quietly and be forgotten. "Mrs. Rebecca already make appointment for you. Tuesday morning. She tell them you have dementia, that you cannot live alone safely." I stared at the brochure, at the sad-looking building and the generic smiling faces of elderly residents. This was where they planned to put me. Where I would spend whatever years I had left, while Rebecca and Curtis spent my life insurance money, sold my house, lived off the inheritance my husband had left for me. How long have they been planning this? "Since Mrs. Rebecca find out about your money," Maria said quietly. "She asked many questions about your finances, your house. She think I don't understand, but I hear everything." "Curtis knows about this?" Maria's face crumpled. "Mr. Curtis, he is not bad man. But Mrs. Rebecca, She is very good at making people believe what she wants them to believe. She tell him you are getting forgetful, that you cannot manage alone. She show him bills you forgot to pay. I've never forgotten to pay a bill. I know. She intercept your mail sometimes, take bills, make you look irresponsible. Then she help Mr. Curtis pay them from his account. The betrayal hit me in waves. Not just Rebecca's calculated cruelty, but Curtis's willingness to believe I was failing, falling apart, becoming a burden that needed to be managed rather than a mother who deserved respect. There is more, Maria said softly. I wasn't sure I could handle more, but I nodded. Mrs. Rebecca, she already has buyer for your house, her friend from yoga class. They plan to sell it for $650,000, even though it's worth more. Quick sale, no realtor fees. My house. The house where I had raised Curtis, where his father and I had been happy before everything fell apart. Where every room held memories of a family that apparently meant nothing to my son anymore. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why are you risking your job to help me? Maria wiped her eyes with a dish towel. Because Mrs. Patricia, she was kind to me, like grandmother I never had. I watched Mrs. Rebecca take everything from her, watched her die alone and afraid. I could not stop it then because I was young, scared, needed my job. She straightened her shoulders. But I am not young anymore, and I cannot watch it happen again. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conspiracy settling around us like a heavy blanket. What do I do now? I asked. You must be very careful, Maria said. Mrs. Rebecca, she is smart. If she knows I told you, she will find another way. Maybe worse way. I need proof. Something that shows Curtis what she really is. Maria nodded. I can help. But we must be careful. Mrs. Rebecca, she watch everything, everyone. The sound of a car in the driveway made us both freeze. Maria ran to the window and peered out. She is back early. You must go. Out the back door, through the garden. I stood up, my legs still shaky. Maria, why didn't you warn Mrs. Patricia? I tried, but no one believed the help over the family. She gave me a sad smile. Maybe this time will be different. I slipped out the back door as I heard Rebecca's key turning in the front lock. As I made my way through their perfectly manicured garden, I could hear her voice calling for Maria, sharp and demanding. Walking back to my car, parked 3 blocks away, I felt like a different person than the one who had driven here an hour ago. The mother who had spent 2 years wondering why her son had grown so cold, so distant. The woman who had blamed herself for the growing chasm in our relationship. Now I knew. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't even really Curtis's fault. It was Rebecca, and she had done this before. But this time she had picked the wrong victim. This time, someone was going to fight back. I spent Monday morning sitting in my car outside Sunset Manor, staring at the building that was supposed to become my prison. The brochure Maria had shown me hadn't lied. It was every bit as depressing as it looked in the glossy photos. Peeling paint on the window frames, a parking lot full of potholes, and the smell of industrial disinfectant that seemed to seep through the very walls. According to Maria, Rebecca had scheduled an appointment for me here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. An evaluation appointment that I knew nothing about, for a condition I didn't have. I pulled out my phone and called the main number. Sunset Manor, this is Jennifer speaking. Hi, this is Joanne Henderson. I believe my daughter-in-law Rebecca Henderson scheduled an appointment for me tomorrow? Oh yes, Mrs. Henderson. Let me pull up your file. I could hear typing in the background. Here it is, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning for intake evaluation. Your daughter-in-law provided us with your medical history and explained your situation. We're so sorry to hear about your recent decline. My recent decline. What exactly did she tell you about my condition? Well, according to Mrs. Rebecca Henderson, you've been experiencing significant memory loss, confusion, some episodes of wandering. She mentioned you've been forgetting to take your medications and that there was an incident last week where you left the stove on all night. I gripped the phone tighter. None of that was true. Not a single word. She also mentioned that you've become quite combative when family members try to help, which is very common with dementia patients. She's concerned for your safety living alone. I see. And who did she speak with there? That would be our admissions coordinator, Mrs. Patterson. She handles all our new resident evaluations. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. Rebecca had painted a complete picture of me as a failing, dangerous woman who needed to be institutionalized for everyone's safety, and they had believed every word. But I needed more than Maria's testimony and my own outrage. I needed proof that would convince Curtis, who had apparently already been conditioned to believe I was losing my mind. I drove to the public library and spent 2 hours learning everything I could about Rebecca Whitmore before she became Rebecca Henderson. What I found made my blood run cold. Patricia Whitmore, Rebecca's grandmother, had indeed died at Sunset Manor 3 years ago. But the obituary told a story very different from the one Rebecca had been selling. Patricia had been a retired professor, sharp as a tack according to former colleagues I found quoted in the university newsletter. She had been working on her memoirs right up until she was admitted to the nursing home. There were other details, too. Patricia's house had sold for significantly below market value to something called Whitmore Family Trust, a trust controlled entirely by Rebecca. The sale had happened just 6 months before Patricia's death, around the same time Patricia's neighbors reported seeing her becoming increasingly withdrawn and confused. I made copies of everything I found and drove home with a folder full of documentation, but I knew it still wouldn't be enough. Rebecca was careful, smart. She left paper trails that looked legitimate on the surface. My phone rang as I was parking in my driveway. Curtis. Mom? How are you feeling? Rebecca said you weren't feeling well when you left last night. The concern in his voice almost broke my heart. This was my son, the boy who used to bring me dandelions and declare them the most beautiful flowers in the world. How had Rebecca convinced him that his own mother was falling apart? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little stomach bug. That's good. Listen, Rebecca wanted me to ask you something. She's been worried about you living alone, and we were wondering if maybe it's time to start thinking about, well, maybe some kind of assisted living situation. There it was, the setup. Curtis, I'm only 66. I'm perfectly capable of living alone. I know. But Mom, you've been forgetting things. Last month you called me 3 times asking if I was coming for dinner, and we hadn't made any plans. And Rebecca said when she visited last week, you couldn't remember her name. I had never called him about dinner. Rebecca had never visited me last week. Every word was a lie, but Curtis believed it all. When did I supposedly call you about dinner? October 15th. You seemed really confused when I told you we didn't have plans. I grabbed my calendar from the kitchen counter and flipped to October. The 15th was a Tuesday. I had been at the senior center all day, volunteering at their book sale. 12 other people could vouch for me being there from 9 in the morning until 6 at night. Curtis, I was volunteering at the senior center that entire day. I have witnesses. Silence on the other end. Maybe I got the date wrong, he said finally, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. And Rebecca never visited me last week. Or any week, for that matter. Mom, that's not. She said you seemed confused when she stopped by. That's exactly the kind of thing we're worried about. Curtis, listen to me very carefully. Rebecca has never been to my apartment. Not once in the 2 years you've been married. If she told you she visited me, she lied to you. Why would she lie about something like that? I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where I either saved my son from his wife's manipulation or lost him forever. Because she's planning to have me committed to a nursing home and take control of my finances, just like she did with her grandmother. The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Mom, that's a serious accusation. it's a serious situation. Curtis, I need you to come to my apartment. Alone. There are things I need to show you. I can't just leave work in the middle of the day because you're making wild accusations about my wife. Then come tonight, after Rebecca goes to her book club. Rebecca didn't have a book club, but Curtis didn't know that. How do you know about her book club? Lucky guess. Will you come? Another long pause. Fine. But Mom, if this is just paranoia or confusion. It's not. And Curtis? Don't tell Rebecca you're coming to see me. Why not? Because if I'm right about what she's planning, then she's dangerous. And if I'm wrong, then it won't matter anyway. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I laid out every piece of documentation I had gathered. The nursing home brochure, the power of attorney documents Maria had photographed, the research about Patricia Whitmore, my calendar showing I couldn't have made those phone calls Curtis remembered. At 7:30, I heard his car in the parking lot. My hands were shaking as I let him in. Curtis looked tired, older than his 38 years. Marriage to Rebecca was wearing on him in ways I don't think he even realized. Okay, Mom, I'm here. What's this about? I gestured to my dining table, where I had spread everything out like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Sit down, sweetheart. We need to talk. For the next hour, I walked Curtis through everything Maria had told me, every document I had found, every lie Rebecca had told him about my supposed decline. I watched his face change as the evidence mounted. This can't be right, he said finally, holding the power of attorney documents with my name on them. These have to be fake. Call the law office listed at the top. Ask if Rebecca Henderson has been in contact with them about conservatorship proceedings for me. He stared at the documents for a long time, then pulled out his phone. The law office answered, even though it was after 8 o'clock. Yes, this is Curtis Henderson. I'm calling about conservatorship documents being prepared for my mother, Joanne Henderson. Yes, I'll hold. I watched my son's face crumble as he listened to whatever they were telling him. I see. And when was this consultation scheduled? Tomorrow morning. I understand. Thank you. He hung up and looked at me with eyes full of pain and confusion. She met with them last Thursday, paid a retainer of $5,000 to start conservatorship proceedings. The lawyer said she told them I was in full agreement and that you had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Curtis. She used our joint account, $5,000 of our money, to have my own mother declared mentally incompetent. His voice was barely a whisper. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was shaking. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know how much you love her. I thought I did. But the woman I love wouldn't do this. Would she? Before I could answer, his phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, I said quickly. Why? Because right now she thinks her plan is working perfectly. If you answer and she hears something in your voice, she'll know we're on to her. We need to be smart about this. Curtis stared at his phone until it stopped ringing. Then he looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since he was a little boy. Vulnerable, scared, needing his mother to make everything okay. What do we do now, Mom? Curtis stayed at my apartment until nearly midnight, going through every document, every piece of evidence I had gathered. I made us coffee and watched my son grapple with the reality that the woman he had married was not who she claimed to be. I keep thinking there has to be an explanation, he said, holding the brochure for Sunset Manor. Maybe she really believed you needed help. Maybe she was trying to protect you. From what? From having my own money? From living in my own home? He set the brochure down and rubbed his face with both hands. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Curtis, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think before you answer. Okay. Has Rebecca ever encouraged you to distance yourself from me? Small things, maybe. Suggesting I was being too demanding? Or that I was holding you back somehow? He was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup. She said you seemed jealous of our relationship, that you were having trouble adjusting to not being the most important woman in my life anymore. And you believed that? It made sense at the time. You did seem upset when we got engaged. I had been upset, but not for the reasons Rebecca suggested. I had been upset because I could see Curtis changing, becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone harder, less generous, less like the compassionate boy I had raised. What else did she say about me? She said you'd had a hard life and that maybe you were becoming bitter. That it was natural for older people to become more demanding, more critical. He looked up at me with guilt written across his face. She made it sound like I was being a good son by giving you space to adjust. By cutting me out of your life. It wasn't supposed to be cutting you out. It was supposed to be healthy boundaries. I could see Rebecca's manipulation so clearly now. She had isolated Curtis from his mother gradually, systematically, using psychology and his own love for her against him. Curtis, when did you start to notice I was supposedly becoming forgetful? About 6 months ago. Rebecca mentioned that when she called you, you seemed confused about things, repeated yourself, asked the same questions multiple times. Rebecca has never called me. Not once. He stared at me. That can't be right. She told me she calls you every week to check on you. Check my phone records. Check them right now. Curtis pulled out his phone and called our wireless provider. After being transferred twice and confirming his identity as my emergency contact, he was able to access my call logs for the past 6 months. There are no calls from Rebecca's number, he said slowly. None at all. Because she never called. She's been lying to you about every interaction she claimed to have with me. We sat in silence for a few minutes while Curtis processed this. I could see him replaying conversations, re-examining memories through this new lens. The night we had dinner last Saturday, he said finally. You left because you felt sick. I left because your housekeeper slipped me a warning note telling me not to drink the wine and to leave immediately. Curtis's face went white. What kind of warning? The kind that suggested you and Rebecca had put something in my drink, something to make me confused and compliant enough to sign legal documents. Jesus Christ. He stood up and started pacing my small living room. What kind of person did I marry? The kind who's done this before. Curtis, I need to tell you about Rebecca's grandmother. I walked him through everything I had learned about Patricia Whitmore, the suspicious circumstances of her nursing home placement, the below-market sale of her house, the pattern that was now repeating itself with me. We need to talk to Maria again, Curtis said when I finished. We need to know exactly what Rebecca is planning. That's dangerous for Maria. If Rebecca finds out she's helping us, then we have to be careful. But Mom, if Rebecca has done this before, if she's some kind of... He couldn't finish the sentence. Serial predator? Yeah. Then Maria might have evidence we need. And there might be other victims. The next morning, Curtis called in sick to work and we drove to his house together. Rebecca's car was gone. She had left for her supposed yoga class at exactly 8:30, just like always. Maria answered the door in her uniform, ready for her Tuesday cleaning routine. When she saw Curtis with me, her face filled with alarm. Mr. Curtis, Mrs. Henderson, you should not be here together. If Mrs. Rebecca finds out. Maria, Curtis said gently, I know about the documents, about the nursing home, about everything. She stared at him for a long moment, then burst into tears. I am so sorry, Mr. Curtis. I tried to protect your mother, but I was afraid to tell you because Mrs. Rebecca, she said you agreed with the plan. I never agreed to anything. Rebecca told me Mom was getting forgetful, but she never mentioned nursing homes or legal documents. Maria wiped her eyes and let us in. There is more you need to know about Mrs. Rebecca's past, about other people she has hurt. She led us to the kitchen and pulled out a small notebook from her purse. I keep records of things I see, things I hear. My English teacher, she tell me always write down important things. She opened the notebook and showed us pages of careful handwriting. Dates, times, conversations, observations. A detailed log of Rebecca's activities and behavior. Mrs. Rebecca, she think I am just cleaning lady who don't understand. But I understand everything. And I see pattern. She flipped to a page dated 3 months ago. Mrs. Rebecca make phone calls to nursing homes, not just Sunset Manor, 5 different places. She asked about costs, about how to get someone admitted quickly. She was shopping around, I said. Yes, and she call lawyer offices too. 3 different lawyers before she find one who will help with conservatorship without asking too many questions. Curtis sank into a kitchen chair. How long has she been planning this? Maria flipped back further in her notebook. First notes about your mother's money, 4 months ago. Mrs. Rebecca find papers in your office, insurance documents, bank statements. She take pictures with her phone. She's been photographing my mother's financial information? Yes, and she research houses in your neighborhood, look at sale prices, talk to real estate agent about quick sales. I felt sick. Rebecca had been cataloging my assets like a predator studying its prey. Maria, I said carefully, you mentioned other people Rebecca has hurt, besides her grandmother. Maria nodded grimly and flipped to another section of her notebook. Before she marry Mr. Curtis, Mrs. Rebecca work as home health aide, but she get fired. Why? Family accuse her of stealing jewelry, convincing old man to change his will. Nothing proven in court, but she lose job, have to leave town. Curtis's hands were clenched into fists. Where was this? Phoenix, Arizona, 3 years ago. Man's name was Mr. Harold Chen. He died 6 months after Mrs. Rebecca leave. Family very suspicious, but too late to prove anything. Are there others? I think so. Mrs. Rebecca, she very careful to not leave trail. But sometimes she make phone calls, talk about previous clients. She think I don't listen, but I hear everything. Maria showed us more entries in her notebook. Fragments of phone conversations, names, locations. Rebecca had been moving from town to town, from victim to victim, perfecting her methods. Mr. Curtis, Maria said softly, Mrs. Rebecca, she not love you. She love your mother's money. That is why she marry into family with older parent who live alone. Curtis looked like he might be sick. She targeted our family specifically. I think so, yes. She asked many questions about your mother before wedding, about her age, her health, her finances. I think she already have plan when she meet you. The front door slammed. We all froze. Maria, are you here? Rebecca's voice called from the foyer. I forgot my water bottle. Curtis and I were trapped in the kitchen with nowhere to hide. Maria gestured frantically toward the pantry, but it was too late. Rebecca appeared in the kitchen doorway and stopped short when she saw us. For a moment, nobody moved. Rebecca's perfect mask slipped just enough for me to see the calculating mind behind it, assessing the situation, looking for the best way to regain control. Then she smiled her beautiful practice smile. Curtis, what a wonderful surprise. And Joanne, you're looking much better than you did Saturday night. But I could see it in her eyes now. The cold intelligence, the absolute lack of genuine emotion. She wasn't surprised to find us here. She was furious that her carefully laid plans had been exposed, and that made her more dangerous than ever. Rebecca stood in the kitchen doorway, her yoga clothes pristine, her smile perfectly calibrated. But I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She was assessing the situation, looking for the best way to regain control. What a surprise to find you all here, she said, her voice honey-sweet. Curtis, darling, why aren't you at work? I needed to talk to Maria about something, Curtis said carefully. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling slightly. Of course. And Joanne, how lovely to see you again so soon. You're feeling better, I hope. I met her gaze directly. Much better, thank you. Maria had gone completely still, clutching her notebook against her chest. Rebecca noticed immediately. "Maria, what's that you have there?" Just my schedule book, Mrs. Rebecca. May I see it?" "I don't think that's necessary," Curtis said, stepping slightly in front of Maria. Rebecca's smile flickered for just a moment. "Curtis, honey, I was just being friendly. Maria, why don't you go ahead and start on the upstairs bathrooms? We can catch up later." "Actually," I said, "Maria was just telling us some interesting stories about your previous employers. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rebecca's smile remained fixed, but something predatory flashed in her eyes. "Oh, what kind of stories?" "Stories about elderly clients who experienced sudden declines in their mental capacity. Clients who needed help managing their affairs." Rebecca laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Joanne, you sound almost paranoid." "Curtis, darling, maybe we should discuss having your mother evaluated by a professional. These kinds of delusions can be very serious." "Like the evaluation you scheduled for me tomorrow at Sunset Manor?" I asked. The mask slipped. For just a second, Rebecca's face went blank with shock before she recovered. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Curtis pulled out his phone. "Should I call Sunset Manor right now and ask about the appointment Rebecca Henderson scheduled for my mother's intake evaluation?" "Curtis, I think you're being manipulated. Your mother is clearly experiencing some kind of mental episode." "Then explain these," Curtis said, pulling out the power of attorney documents. "Explain why my wife paid a lawyer $5,000 to have my mother declared mentally incompetent without telling me." Rebecca stared at the documents for a long moment. When she looked back up, her expression had changed completely. Gone was the sweet, concerned daughter-in-law. What remained was cold, calculating, and dangerous. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "Your mother is getting old, Curtis. She's going to need care eventually. I was trying to plan ahead to protect everyone." "Protect everyone? Or protect your access to her money?" "This is ridiculous." Rebecca's voice was rising now. "I don't need your mother's money. We have plenty of our own." "Do we?" Curtis asked. "Because according to our bank statements, you've been spending pretty freely lately. The yoga classes, the spa treatments, the shopping trips. Where exactly has that money been coming from?" I watched Rebecca's face as she realized Curtis had been checking up on her finances. Her mask was cracking further with each question. "I've been working," she said defensively. "As what? You haven't had a job since we got married." "I do consulting work, private clients." "What kind of consulting?" Rebecca's eyes darted between Curtis and me, looking for an escape route. "Personal care consulting, helping families deal with aging relatives." "Like Harold Chen in Phoenix?" I asked. Rebecca went completely still. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The elderly man you worked for as a home health aide, the one whose family accused you of theft and manipulation before you left town." "That's a lie." Maria spoke up for the first time since Rebecca had arrived. "No, Mrs. Rebecca, is not lie. I hear you on phone with lawyer in Phoenix. You talk about Mr. Chen, about how his family cannot prove anything." Rebecca whirled around to face Maria, her composure completely gone now. "You've been eavesdropping on my private conversations?" "I clean house. I hear many things. Like when you call nursing homes about Mrs. Henderson. Like when you talk to real estate agent about quick sale of her house." "Curtis," Rebecca said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. "You can't believe them. They're conspiring against me." But Curtis was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. "Is it true? About Harold Chen? I worked for an elderly man in Phoenix. His family was abusive and neglectful. I tried to help him, and they turned against me when he died." "That's not what happened," I said quietly. "I called the Phoenix Police Department yesterday. They remember the case. They said Harold Chen changed his will 3 weeks before he died, leaving everything to Rebecca Whitmore instead of his children. The family suspected you had drugged him and coerced him into signing the new will." Rebecca's face had gone white. They couldn't prove anything because there was nothing to prove. Because you're very good at what you do, Curtis said slowly. And what you do is prey on elderly people. I am not a predator, Rebecca snapped. I help people. I provide care and companionship to lonely old people who have been abandoned by their families. And in return, they leave you their money, I said. Sometimes grateful clients want to show their appreciation. That's not a crime. What about your grandmother? Curtis asked. Patricia Whitmore. Was she grateful when you had her committed to a nursing home and sold her house? Rebecca's composure cracked completely. My grandmother was losing her mind. She was becoming dangerous to herself. I saved her from hurting herself or someone else. By stealing $800,000 from her? I didn't steal anything. That money was supposed to be mine anyway. She promised it to me when I was a child. So you just decided to take it a little early? I asked. Rebecca was breathing hard now, her perfect facade completely gone. You don't understand what it's like, watching someone you love deteriorate, watching them become a shell of themselves. I was merciful. I gave them comfort in their final years. And their money in your bank account, Curtis said. I provided them with care. I was the only one who cared about them. Is that what you were going to do for me? I asked. Provide me with care at Sunset Manor while you spent my life insurance money? Rebecca's eyes flashed with something ugly. You should be grateful someone is willing to take care of you. Curtis has his own life to live. He doesn't need to be burdened with a demanding, aging mother who refuses to accept help. I never refused help. You never offered help. You offered theft. I offered a solution to an inevitable problem. Curtis had been quietly recording the conversation on his phone. Now he held it up so Rebecca could see. Say that again, he said quietly. Say it again for the record. Rebecca stared at the phone, finally understanding that she had been caught. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then she lunged for the phone. Curtis was faster. He stepped back, keeping the device out of her reach. It's too late, Rebecca. It's all recorded. Rebecca stood in the middle of the kitchen, breathing hard, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. When she looked at Curtis, I saw something that made my blood run cold. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she said quietly. You think this is over, but it's not. I've been planning this for months. I know things about your mother that you don't. Things that will make you wish you had never crossed me. What kind of things? Curtis asked. Rebecca smiled, but it was nothing like her previous smiles. This one was full of malice. Your mother isn't the sweet, innocent victim she's pretending to be. Ask her about the money your father left. Ask her why she never told you how much there really was. I felt my stomach drop. Curtis looked at me with confusion. What is she talking about, Mom? Rebecca's smile widened. Oh, she never told you? Your father left more than $300,000 in life insurance. Much more. Tell him, Joanne. Tell your son what you've been hiding from him. Curtis stared at me, waiting for an explanation I didn't want to give. Because Rebecca was right about one thing. There had been more money than I had told him about. But not for the reasons she thought. The silence in the kitchen stretched like a taut wire. Curtis was staring at me with a mixture of confusion and hurt, while Rebecca stood there with that triumphant smile, believing she had found the weapon to destroy our relationship once and for all. Mom? Curtis's voice was barely a whisper. What is she talking about? I took a deep breath. After 2 years of protecting this secret, it was time for the truth. Your father's life insurance policy was for $800,000, not $300,000. Curtis's face went white. 800. Why didn't you tell me? Because 500,000 of it went to something you didn't know about. Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't going the direction she had planned. Curtis, when your father died, he left debts. Gambling debts, bad ones. The kind of debts that don't just go away when someone dies. Curtis sank into a kitchen chair. Dad gambled? For years. I tried to help him stop, tried to get him into treatment, but he couldn't quit. When he died, some very dangerous people came to me demanding payment. They said the debt transferred to his family. How much? Curtis asked quietly. $480,000. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. Rebecca's expression had changed from triumph to confusion. I used most of the insurance money to pay them off, I continued, to protect you, to make sure they would never come after my son looking for money your father owed them. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were 29 years old, just starting your career. Because I didn't want you to know that your father, the man you hero-worshipped, had been a gambling addict who left his family in danger, because I wanted to protect the memory you had of him. Curtis put his head in his hands. All these years, I thought you were just. I thought you were struggling because you were bad with money. I let you think that. It was easier than telling you the truth. Rebecca was staring at us both like we were speaking a foreign language. This revelation had completely derailed her attempt to pit us against each other. So the $300,000 you said you had, Curtis said slowly, that's what was left after you paid off Dad's debts? That's what was left after I paid off the debts. After I paid for your father's funeral. After I bought this apartment and put some money aside for emergencies. The truth is, Curtis, I've been living on Social Security and the small pension from my cleaning jobs. The inheritance Rebecca was so eager to get her hands on was never that much to begin with. Rebecca's face was flushed with anger. You're lying. There has to be more. The house your father left, the investments, were mortgaged and liquidated to pay gambling debts, I said calmly. There was no house, Rebecca. No secret fortune. Just a woman trying to protect her son from the truth about his father's addiction. Curtis looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. All this time, I thought you were being irresponsible with money, and you were actually protecting me. That's what mothers do, I said simply. Rebecca was breathing hard, her carefully laid plans crumbling around her. This doesn't change anything. You're still old, you're still going to need care eventually, and Curtis still needs to plan for that. Curtis can plan for whatever he thinks is appropriate, I said, but it will be his choice, not yours. And it certainly won't involve drugging me and stealing what little I have left. Maria, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. Mrs. Rebecca, police are here. We all turned to look out the kitchen window. 2 patrol cars were pulling into the driveway. Curtis looked at me in confusion. Mom, did you call the police? I did, Maria said quietly. When Mrs. Rebecca go to yoga this morning, I call them. I give them my notebook, tell them about Mrs. Patricia, about the plans for Mrs. Henderson. Rebecca's face went dead white. You can't prove anything. It's all hearsay and speculation. Actually, Curtis said, holding up his phone, I have a recording of you admitting to planning to have my mother committed and stealing her money. I think that's probably enough. The doorbell rang. Rebecca looked around the kitchen like a trapped animal, but there was nowhere to go. Curtis, she said, her voice taking on that pleading tone again. You love me. We're married. You can't let them arrest me. Curtis looked at his wife, really looked at her, and I saw the exact moment when whatever love he had felt for her finally died. The woman I loved never existed, did she? She was just a character you created to get close to my family. Rebecca didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was written all over her face. The police came in and took Rebecca away. She went quietly, her lawyer instincts probably telling her that anything she said would only make things worse. Curtis gave them his recording, and Maria handed over her notebook with months of documented evidence. After they left, the 3 of us sat in Rebecca's pristine kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of her carefully constructed life. What happens now? Curtis asked. Now you decide who you want to be, I said. You can be the man Rebecca tried to turn you into, or you can be the man I raised you to be. Curtis was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at Maria. Maria, I know Rebecca hasn't been paying you what you're worth. I also know you risked everything to protect my mother. If you're willing to stay on while I figure out what to do with this house, I'd like to give you a raise, a substantial one. Maria's eyes filled with tears. You are a good man, Mr. Curtis, like your mother always say. Curtis turned to me. Mom, I want you to move in here. At least temporarily. This house is too big for one person, and I think we have some lost time to make up for. Curtis, you don't need to take care of me. I'm perfectly capable of living independently. I know you are. That's not why I'm asking. I'm asking because I miss my mother. I miss the relationship Rebecca convinced me to throw away. And I think maybe we both deserve a chance to rebuild what was taken from us. I looked around Rebecca's cold, perfect house and tried to imagine it filled with warmth and laughter instead of manipulation and lies. Would it be all right if I brought some pictures, some of your baby things I saved? Curtis smiled for the first time in what felt like years. I was hoping you would. 6 months later, Curtis and I were sitting on what used to be Rebecca's perfect white sofa, now made comfortable with colorful throw pillows and soft blankets. Maria had become more than a housekeeper. She was family now, cooking meals that filled the house with wonderful smells and treating Curtis like the son she'd never had. Rebecca had pled guilty to fraud and elder abuse charges in 3 different states. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and the victims' families were slowly recovering some of their stolen assets. Curtis had sold the house in Millfield Estates and bought a smaller, warmer place closer to downtown. We had turned one of the bedrooms into a guest room for Maria's daughter when she visited from El Salvador. Mom, Curtis said, setting down his coffee cup, I have something to tell you. What's that, sweetheart? I've been seeing someone. Her name is Sarah, and she's a teacher at the elementary school downtown. She's nothing like Rebecca. What's she like? She's kind. Really kind. She volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends, and she brings groceries to her elderly neighbors. She knew I was married before, and when I told her about everything that happened with Rebecca, do you know what she said? What? She said she was proud of me for protecting my mother, even though it meant giving up my marriage. She said that told her everything she needed to know about what kind of man I am. I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. She sounds wonderful. She wants to meet you, if you're okay with that. I would love to meet her. And Mom? She knows about Dad, about the gambling, about what you sacrificed to protect me. She thinks you're amazing? I reached over and took my son's hand. You turned out to be a good man, Curtis, despite everything. Despite your father's problems, despite my mistakes, despite Rebecca's manipulation. You're exactly the man I hoped you would be. I learned from the best, he said, squeezing my hand. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed in my comfortable room in our comfortable house, I thought about the woman I had been 6 months ago. The lonely widow, isolated from her son, struggling to make ends meet, unaware that she was being stalked by a predator. That woman could never have imagined this life, this warmth, this security, this sense of belonging. She could never have imagined that her biggest nightmare would turn into her greatest blessing. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to the most important truths. Sometimes losing everything we thought we wanted helps us find everything we actually need. I had my son back. I had Maria, who had become the daughter I never had. And soon I would meet Sarah, who might become the daughter-in-law I had always hoped for. Rebecca had tried to steal my future, but in the end, she had given me something far more valuable, the chance to rebuild my relationship with Curtis on a foundation of honesty instead of secrets. I fell asleep that night in a house full of love, surrounded by family I had chosen and family who had chosen me back. It was more than enough. It was everything. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.